Hey everybody. Hey, hold on a second. Alright, let me get some brain juice going. So, the video I posted yesterday about vacuum timing, that has opened up a lot of earballs on what is going on with that, and they wanted more knowledge on how to make that work for them. Like a lot of people, comments, private messages, emails. So I'm like, you know what? I need to go farther in depth on this. And what I do, there's a lot I do to get great fuel mileage and horsepower out of my cars. Like, I've even had some people say, who cares about fuel mileage? It's a hot rod. Okay, well, here's my counter argument to that. Yes, they are hot rods. But if you notice, I have 1, 2, 3 classic cars in my driveway. You don't see any modern vehicles anywhere on this property. So these classic cars are my daily drivers, and yes, they're hot rods, but they're dailies. And so I want them to be efficient hot rods. So if you have an efficient running engine throughout its whole spectrum of tunability, then whenever I do want to kick it in the ass, it won't pop, fart, hiccup, stumble, nothing. It's just gonna squat and boogie. Actually, you know what? As one old guy told me, boot, scoot, and boogie. So I don't want it to pop, you know, not go anywhere until the plugs clean out. You know, your excuse for going hot rodding that day shouldn't be, oh, I need to put new plugs in it. No. So if you get an efficient running engine, your combustion chambers will stay cleaner. Your plugs will, these plugs have been in this motor for, shoot, like 15,000 miles now. You know, the plugs have been in that motor for like 10,000 miles. You know, you look at modern vehicles, are they replacing plugs every oil change? No. So, back to what I was saying. Of course, the neighbor wants to start up his loud diesel. You know, I had one Karen in the neighborhood that was complaining about my loud muscle cars, but then they completely ignore the fact of loud diesels. But anyways, one of the first things I would really check on your car is the vacuum line going to your distributor. So this, I have it teed in right now with a vacuum gauge on it because I'm going to show you guys everything, but I got so tired having to replace vacuum lines like once a month, because whichever Chinese company is making these vacuum lines, they're garbage. They crack up, they're junk. So I got silicone hose, and I haven't had to replace it ever since. So if you have vacuum leaks going to your vacuum pod on your distributor, then your vacuum pod won't be working correctly at all. So check your vacuum lines. Now, what I do with timing is not only just vacuum related. Let me show you that right now. All right, even from the owner's manual, just auto shops that go by the book, what they'll do is run way too low of a base ignition timing. What I do, so this is your mechanical advance on a Mopar distributor, which is actually a pain in the ass because you got to damn near take the whole distributor apart just to get to it. You got to pull that out, you got to pop the pin, and then the roll pin, then you got to shove the whole shaft out. But anyways, we're just getting to this. So this is your mechanical advance, and I'm kind of glad I grabbed this distributor, because here's also a problem that people have too. Now, the mechanical advance on this is really stiff. It's just all gummy and stuck. And look, I'll open it a little bit. Come on. And look, it didn't even return back to where it was. So what happens is, come on, close up. Anyway, you get the idea. There it goes, it closed up. So the centrifugal advance, that adds timing with RPM, which makes more horsey powers. If your centrifugal advance is sticky like this one, you know, these are 50-year-old cars. So now if you have a new distributor in a car, you most likely are not going to be having that problem. But one thing I would check is, you got your rotor. Pull the cap off and make sure that the rotor, you can rotate it back and forth. That shows you your centrifugal advance. And make sure that it's moving freely. Because if it's not advancing, you are stuck with base timing only, which makes no horsey powers, and timing affects horsepower and efficiency more than your carburetor will. They even tested out on Engine Masters. They threw a crap load of jet at it and took a crap load of jet away, and it didn't affect the horsepower as much as, say, a 10-degree swing on just timing alone. All right, so another thing I do to the distributor is, normally these things come with pretty heavy springs, but this distributor is pretty clapped out. I mean, even one of the pegs is loose, and they normally don't open up till probably like 3,000, 3,500 RPM, which is like highway cruising speed, which is dumb. I put soft springs in it, and I make this sucker max out the mechanical advance right at around 1,800 to 2,000 RPM, which is the street cruising speed, 35, 45 miles an hour. That way the engine runs more efficient because it's high manifold vacuum, low cylinder pressure, so you can get away with the additional timing and the engine will just run cleaner, smoother. It actually make it to where it feels like it has less cam in it, and you're not taking away horsepowers. You're just making the engine more efficient, so when you do kick it in the ass, your max horsepower is still there and it's not got fouly plugs and all that crap that you got to burn out. Let's go back to the engine. This engine that we're tinkering with right now, and just to use as an example, I got my timing light, my vacuum gauge. This is a 440 that is 11-to-1 compression, actually about 11.2, 11.3. It has Elbrock Easy Street heads on it that have been ported. I mean, they're not like super max ported, they're just, you know, nicely mild ported. It has a pretty decent sized hydraulic roller cam in it. I actually wish this cam was a little bit smaller so I can have more low-end grunt, because really all this car is supposed to do is just be a tire burner. But it still makes enough low-end grunt that it just blows right through the mid-range into the maximum RPM and just kills tires, hauls ass, and really scoots. But the cam is like a 238, 245 at a 112 lobe separation, which you would think is for low end, but no, it's for top end. That's why I wouldn't mind having the same cam specs, but with a tighter lobe separation, so I get more mid-range out of it. But I had this cam, I threw it in there, and now that it's all tuned up and running really good, this thing hauls ass all the time. Low end, mid-range, top end, so it's good. Anyways, this distributor right here is actually a fire core. Now, I do kind of like the fire cores, even though they're a Chinese distributor, because I can pull this cap off, and instead of taking the whole distributor apart, it has a screwdriver. It has two screws in there with stoppers, and no, it has two screws in there with stoppers, and it allows me to adjust my mechanical advance without taking the whole thing apart and welding anything up. It just has stoppers in that slot. So that's kind of a nice little trick to this distributor. And another thing you need to look for, if you have a vacuum pod with the hex on it, that means you can actually adjust the spring pressure on the vacuum pod. If you have just this round one right here, see it's perfectly round all the way around, you can't adjust this, and it actually is useless on a cammed engine. Because on a cammed engine here, you need to soften that spring, because you will have less manifold vacuum, and so you'll turn it in clockwise, which will soften the spring, and it'll actually make it to where the vacuum will be able to pull on the diaphragm at a lower manifold vacuum than if it was stock. I'll show you this in actually functioning with the vacuum gauge here in a minute. But yeah, this one here is screwed in all the way because this engine had such low initial manifold vacuum that I needed to soften that just to get the vacuum advanced distributor to be able to do anything in the RPM and the vacuum range that I needed it to do. Here's for the guys that think 26 degrees base timing is way too much. Like I said, 11-to-1 compression, 440, 60 over. And I had the engine running for a while already, so that way you get it up to temperature and don't have to wait on it. Look at this. Key on, Oh my God, it just kills starters. All right, so what we're gonna look at right now is the base timing. I've got the vacuum line disconnected on the distributor, and we're gonna check it out. And I was wrong. It's 22 degrees initial, not 26. That was a different car. So you forget which car you're working on. So I'll prove it to you right now, 22. Actually, you guys probably can't see that just because of the frequency of the timing light and the angle. It's probably hard to see, but it's 22. Now, let's hook up the vacuum line. Look at that. What we got? So with 22 at base timing, I have 12, roughly 12 inches back. But this thing is off by about an inch, so let's just call it 11. 11 and a half. Listen to the engine just as I plug this vacuum line in. See how much smoother the engine is running now with the vacuum line hooked up? And that is with the vacuum pod unscrewed, well, technically screwed in, so that way this low manifold cam, or low manifold vacuum cam, can actually pull on the vacuum pod. But a smooth running engine is an efficient running engine. Now, you're not killing horsepower, you're just making other parameters of the engine run more efficient. Your max horsepower is still there. See, we gained almost 3 inches of vacuum. Smoother running engine. Now I'm going to take some turns out of that vacuum pod on the distributor and show you why you need to adjust that to your engine. That's about the factory setting, but watch, now we'll hook the vacuum line back up. Notice the RPM of the engine didn't change at all. And we only gained 1 inch of vacuum instead of 3. My earballs tell me that's most better. All right. Now, not to sound repetitive, but vacuum pod again. There's one other thing you need to know about it. So these have about a 15-degree swing on them. So when it pulls on it, you're going to gain about 15 degrees of timing. It all depends on the distributor, who made it, whatever. But sometimes what you want, how you get it running down low on the highway under a load, say pulling a trailer or whatever, might be a little bit too much timing and you might hear a ping. So what I have done on, not the General, but on Minty, because that one tows a lot, is I will actually take some throw out of it. This one isn't adjustable, but I've had to, you know, I'll pry up the base a little bit, or I'll wrap a piece of wire around the bottom. It's hard to see, but there you go. You can kind of see there's a bottom flange on both sides. I'll take a piece of wire and wrap it around, which will act as a stop and limit how far the plunger goes in. And that's just taking some vacuum timing out of it. And it just all depends on your engine. Everyone's different. Cam, intake manifold, exhaust, gear ratio. I mean, altitude, temperature, everything is different. And so that's kind of a lot why fuel injected computer controlled cars are so good, is because they're constantly tuning themselves to those conditions. Now, when you are tuning on your engine, don't tune it when it's cold. It's going to do you no good, because you want it. Do you drive your car around when the engine's cold? How you tune your engine is at the temperature of you driving it most of the time, which is normally thermostat. So try and get it close to thermostat before you really do any engine tuning, mostly carburetor. Timing stuff isn't really temperature related, but I'm just throwing that out there so that way you know. Let's go for a test drive, shall we? Now, you saw that engine was making about 15 inches of vacuum at idle. Let's show you what it does driving conditions and on the highway, and how you can use that to tune it. And also, if you drive around with a vacuum gauge, you can use that to tune your power valve on when you want the power valve to open. I'll show you. I almost forgot. I need to show you guys my mechanical advanced timing. So we're going to go ahead and do that, because it seems like that's where a lot of people get confused on the vacuum with the timing, with the base timing. So your base timing, that's the engine when it first fires up. Your mechanical advance, that is only comes in with RPM. And your vacuum advance is added to both of those. Now, if you kick it in the ass and your RPM goes up, well, yeah, you're not going to be running 40 degrees of timing at wide open anymore, because since you kicked it in the ass and you got low manifold vacuum, the vacuum pod on the distributor has taken away all that timing that it had put in. So now the only thing you have is your mechanical added to your base. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that is right now. And a lot of times when I'm doing my horsepower tuning with timing, I'm not even using a timing light, because every car is different. So what I do is I kind of set it close. I'll set it to start with like 28, and then I go out and drive it. If it's not pinging, I'll add a little more timing. If it's not pinging, I'll add a little bit more timing. All I'm doing is out testing with a wrench, and I'm just tuning by my ear balls. And as soon as I start to hear it ping, I'll back it off a little bit, lock it down, and that's where that engine wants to sit at. That's where it's comfortable at. It's not by a textbook telling me 28, 30, or somebody just saying, oh, set it at 32 and you're good. No, every engine is different, and that's why I just use my ear and listen for pinging for that max horsepower tuning. Now, if you got a really loud car, yeah, it's probably safe to go ahead and use a timing light, because you're not going to hear the ping. But luckily, this car has mufflers. That car's stupid loud, but I can still hear the ping. So I'm safe on these by tuning by ear. But yeah, if you ain't got no mufflers, yeah, just go ahead and safe bet and use a timing light just to double check, because probably not going to hear it. All right, so 22 degrees of base timing. We're going to redo that scene, because I said 26, which that's a different car. So 22, here we go. No throttle start. I didn't hear that starter going rah, 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 or kicking it back. And that is a cheapo $85 AutoZone Dakota starter. So it's not no high torque starter, and my battery's in the trunk. So it has to go through all that battery cable to that cheapo starter. Now, if that 22 degrees of base timing was too much for that motor, you'd think that 11-to-1 compression, cheapo starter, battery in the trunk would all add up to kickback, right? No. All right, so you saw it. It's 34. Now let's go for a drive. All right, I just realized another thing I forgot to show you guys. The vacuum line connected and disconnected timing difference. Now I got to hook it back up. All right, let's do the math here. So we know without the vacuum line, we had 22 degrees. With the vacuum line, we had 35. Now, I know that those fire core distributors add 15 degrees. So I must have taken away 2 degrees of the throw on the vacuum pod. So if I took that distributor apart, I bet I've got a piece of wire or a bent up on that, and you just forget. I mean, I did that long ago, and I've had to do a bunch of different vehicles between then and now. So we have 13 degrees with the vacuum line hooked up that it added. Now, when the centrifugal opens, it's going to gain, so we had 34 when the centrifugal opened up from the base timing. So we know we gained 13 inches of vacuum, or we know we gained 13 degrees just with the vacuum line hooked up, and that was at 15 inches of vacuum. So if we go out on the road and I'm on the highway and it's above 15 degrees, or it's above 15 inches of vacuum, you know that it's adding 13 degrees to my mechanical advance, which will make it what, 47, or no, yeah, 47 degrees of total timing. Which some of you guys would be like, oh my God, that's a lot. But no, watch. I know the AFR is going to be hard to read because of the frequency of the LED, or the frequency of that lighting compared to the frequency of the camera. So I might have to read that off to you sometimes, but right now we're idling at 13.4, 13.5, and we have our 15 inches of vacuum. See, now this cam is pretty decent size. In gear, I'm only getting 10 inches. And actually it's about 9. And I know that's not enough to really pull on that vacuum pod on the distributor hard. And so it's probably right now idling at your base timing of 22, which is why you want high base timing. So with automatic cars, when you put it in gear, you still have that higher timing to make the engine run better. If you had low base timing and you put it in gear, it's just gonna be bleh. Yeah, it's gonna idle like shit. So that's why you do that. Now, under 50 miles an hour, you're probably not gonna see above 15 inches of vacuum from what I remember. I mean, I tuned this thing a while ago, but on the highway, you're going to see some high numbers because that's the cam coming into its efficiency. I'm going to do the crossover shifting method here. So right now I'm at about 45 miles an hour and we're already at a higher vacuum. So you know, right now we're probably sitting close to 45 to 47 degrees, depending on the centrifugal weights. You're going to see that vacuum number go up higher once we get up to a higher RPM. consistent RPM here. Traffic's going too slow to get to 3,000. Alright, here we go. So right about 2,900 is about where I cruise. Look at that. You know we're at 47 degrees of timing right now. Guarantee you. 47 degrees, smooth, efficient cruises. Look, no pinging. I can give it throttle. Watch. Watch the vacuum. No pinging. Can't give it too much throttle. I got traffic, but see, you're at low cylinder pressure right now, and as soon as I give it throttle, it takes away that vacuum timing back down to the centrifugal timing, which was 34. See? Perfecto. Cruising at old 13.5, 13.6. Alright, so we're going to do an experiment right now. We're going to disconnect the vacuum line and go back on the highway, so then it's only 34, not 47, and you'll be able to see the difference. Alright, so the vacuum line from the distributor is disconnected right now with just a screw stuck in it. So we don't have a vacuum leak, but let's see what we got now. Try and get to a consistent speed here. Alright. So we're at about 29 to 3,000 like last time. And see, look, we lost vacuum. We're actually down into the red right now. And it's running a little bit leaner because it doesn't have the vacuum signal it used to have, so it's not pulling as much fuel through. Or better's the other way. And I can actually feel the engine feels a little bit more luggish. I mean, we're talking minute, but those minute things is what gives you efficiency and fuel mileage and all that. So, but I actually haven't done that test before, and it proves it. Tell you what, in just daily driving around town, just street stuff, you can definitely feel it with and without the vacuum line hooked up. Vacuum line is definitely better. In fact, I'm going to put that back right now. Instantly smoother. See, that was a pretty good driving video. Learned some vacuum techniques, taught you what I know, and look, I even picked up a bum. Alright, I just made a quick little illustration to kind of show you why you really have to tune every engine itself, and you can't really go off of what others have unless what they have is very similar to you. Because look, the General was at 15 inches of vacuum at idle, and then going on the highway it got all the way up to 19 inches, you know, before giving it more throttle, more throttle, more throttle, more throttle. You know, that's like wide open, you know, versus stock. You know, a stock engine idles, you know, roughly 18 to 20 inches of vacuum, so I just cut it down the middle at 19. And which Minty has a fairly stockish cam in it. It's a tiny little performance cam, and it doesn't gain much more on the highway than it does, you know, at idle. So the stock cams, they start off high, gain very little, and then drop off. The cammed engines, they start off low, they start to come into their vacuum because that's, you know, that's where the cam is coming in. You know, as the engine, as the camshaft profile gets into its RPM range, you know, it's going to gain vacuum. So that's why it's really tricky to tune carburetors sometimes to big cammed engines for daily driving, because you have to deal with that big swing. But that's all carburetor stuff. I can talk about that later. And you saw the vacuum gauge inside the car. That's a good tuning tip for when your power valves come in. So anyways, I hope I educated some of you guys, and you know, maybe you guys will go out and do some magic to your vehicles and make them more efficient. Plugs last longer, oil changes last longer, your engines, actually your engine will last longer because you're not running so much raw fuel out the, or you know, the cylinder, you'll be just a cleaner combustion chamber. Cleaner combustion chamber, longer lasting engine, and you'll gain some horsey powers, daily driving, and maybe even gain some wide open throttle if you didn't have enough timing in it to begin with. So anyway, I'm no expert. This is all just knowledge I have gained getting my cars more daily driver, and I'm just trying to share the knowledge that I have with you guys because I got asked a lot of questions, and I hope this answered some of them. So I'll see you guys later. Till next time. I got to get back to work. Get your ass to work, Derek. I don't want you missing any spots now. I want a mirror finish polish there, Derek. I didn't say break time.
Clean your damn floors.
Just kidding. Derek's my buddy.